now more than ever. We're short of workers. We have a population that is not reproducing it on its own with the same level that it used to. The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
That was Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer speaking to reporters outside the Capitol yesterday. Schumer's call for a path to citizenship for the some 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the U.S. comes just after a U.S. District Court blocked the Title 42 rule used by Presidents Trump and Biden to expel asylum seekers at the Mexican border due to the COVID public health emergency. The Biden administration has 5 weeks to halt use of the order.
Well, it should end because the pandemic is over.
Yeah,
no more pandemic authority for governments. No more.
This is one of those funny things where the politics that you expect sort of don't align. So the people who tended to be more oppositional to the COVID era of restrictions and policies also tend to be more hostile to immigration policies that allow people in. And so Title 42 was a rule that basically allowed immigrants to be quickly returned to their countries on the basis that there was an ongoing pandemic and they were trying to keep them from spreading COVID in the United States of America. But it made
absolutely no sense in this context because COVID was already in the country. I mean, you can understand in some theoretical universe where, we have Fortress America, we've locked down the country and there's some contagion and we have to expel people from other countries or people who've snuck in or something because they might be turning into zombies, like some dystopian sci-fi universe. Fine. That's not the one we live in. COVID is here already. It has nothing to do with immigrants. They're not spreading it any more than anyone else is spreading it. So there was just this would be like the student loan thing, like so many other things I would say the pandemic authority makes no sense in this context. But
so what's funny is that when Trump was in office and he was doing this, liberals acted like it was a horrific policy, that he was undermining legitimate asylum claims, that he was being deeply inhumane. And there was a lot of chatter about how, we've got to get him out in part because we've got to get rid of this policy. Biden has been operating under this same policy for his past 2 years of being president of the United States. Only now, because of this court decision, is he now having to get rid of it in what was the next 5 weeks or so. It's the politics of this are all over the place.
The incredible continuity in the immigration policies is something I think we've noted before, that the very spontaneous, momentary outrage about the treatment of asylum seekers, of kids that have come over the border during the Trump administration. And then we learned that a lot of those facilities and even some of the pictures were from when Obama was president. Yep. My understanding is some things were changed, but it was not. It was not specifically like a Trump kind of thing. It was just the way the federal government has generally treated these people, which you can think is wrong. I do think it was wrong.
Yeah,
but it was made into because of Trump's rhetoric, uniquely malicious.
Yes, which again raises questions about whether or not there will be more substantive justice under a DeSantis versus a Trump. Since you got to give it to Trump, he knows how to say things in a way that gets people actually in the streets and agitating for change, even if those aren't the changes that you or anybody in particular believes in. People pay attention when Trump is doing the bad thing, and the way they don't pay attention when more moderate Republicans or centrist Democrats do the bad thing.
It's interesting how much there has been a kind of policy switch on this issue. You heard how Chuck Schumer was justifying in that clip, legalizing the immigrants here, inviting more because we don't have enough workers. We need more workers. We need more people to contribute to the economy in that way. That's something, 2 or 3 decades ago, Republicans would have said, and Democrats who are more protectionist and more had the working class, the blue collars, union people, et cetera, who don't want to compete with that labor, were more inclined to say, well, what about taking American jobs? Now the sorting has occurred, and increasingly those voices are within the Republican Party. The Democratic Party is more a party of the managerial elite. So they want more workers, they want more immigrants. The Republican Party is now the voice of what about the American worker, et cetera, et cetera, and so forth.
Well, it's worth doing a bigger segment because I both think that Democrats are too blasé about the reality of the effects of immigration on the lowest tranche of American worker, the most vulnerable American worker, at the same time that I think Republicans often overstate that impact just based on the studies. It's real, but it's also overstated. And I do think there's a way you should be able to talk about immigration from a humanitarian perspective that focuses on these asylum claims, which are legitimate, and people who are asylum seekers seeking, fleeing political persecution, et cetera, are being turned away in part because of these ridiculous COVID-era policies. But additionally, there needs to be a more robust conversation about what American foreign policy is doing that's often at the root of why so many countries are in turmoil and causing such an immigration crisis. There's also a lot of climate migrants that we're going to see increasingly over time. So I think that everyone's kind of talking past each other. You're right. There's like this weird ideological consistency and slippage between parties where no one's really offering a lot in the way of affirmative solutions.
And you're right that you feel the pain of the American worker. I think it's smart to talk about policies to help absorb some of the shocks that immigration will create. At the same time, I would have said Democrats, 30 years were not being realistic about this, and now Republicans to some degree are not being realistic about this either. That you can't just like pause the kind of like technological and work progress. To help to protect industries that are not able to compete and survive because we have a better labor pool. That's going to that would hurt the economy. That's going to raise. We're concerned about prices going up. I mean, that if you create deliberate inefficiencies because you want to protect certain jobs that are being outcompeted, that's just not a long-term way to run a country. So if you want to protect worker, you need to come up with things like a universal basic income or some kind of economic that's rather than protecting the job is protecting the person or giving the person some way to get by. That's not
investing in industries that actually have to be done in the United States of America. You mentioned price increases. Some of the price increases are the consequence of these supply chain issues where we simply cannot get goods. Still, in some cases, I'm just getting a sofa delivered that I ordered 8 months ago. Couldn't get supplies delivered because all of our manufacturing happens overseas. And moreover, a lot of the storage facilities that we used to keep in America, people decided it was too expensive to pay the rent on those kinds of things. So to the extent that we had a backlog of essential goods, companies decided it was worth it to get rid of those facilities to earn pennies on the dollar. We saw something like this happen in the medical context with monkeypox, where there was a decision made not to pay to keep the monkeypox vaccine stores going, and so we ended up with a deficiency earlier in a disease cycle that could have really blown up in a terrible way.
Yeah, it's good point of that. We haven't talked about monkeypox in a while. I wonder how that's going. Maybe we should get a reporter back on to check in on that.
Follow up, yeah.
All right, we'll have more Rising right after this. Stay with us.